I'm syndereN, and I approve the content of this guide.
Hey guys, this is SunsFan, and welcome to the official Dotacinema guide to Gyrocopter. If you aren't familiar with this hero, you may want to watch the introduction we did for him at the corresponding link. syndereN and I also created a gameplay walkthrough of Neil using our guide in a game of his own. Gyrocopter is an agility hard carry who's different from other carries in the sense that he can actually join team fights relatively early on. He has a nice mix of early game nuking abilities mixed with AoE damage that can be crippling in the later stages of the game. Skilling Gyrocopter is pretty straightforward. You can, however, adjust the build to fit your purposes. Generally speaking, you want to take Rocket Barrage at level 1 for first blood purposes. At level 2, pick up either a level of homing missile or flak cannon depending on your needs. At 4, get a point in whatever you didn't take here. But Rocket Barrage should be maxed out first since this will be your main source of damage in the early to mid game. Your ultimate should be taken at the standard 6, 11, and 16 since it gives you great teamfight presence. You generally want to max out flak cannon second. Some people might argue that you can get way more nuking potential when maxing out the rocket, but you have to remember that you are still a carry that has to farm. Flak cannon gives you an effective way to do that, as leveling it up allows you to easily farm stacks in the jungle or ancients, which will catapult your farm. After you've done that, it's up to you whether you want to spend the remaining points in homing missile for more magical damage or go straight for stats. Both ways have its benefits and should be looked at depending on the course of the game. Keep in mind that in 6.81, homing missile was buffed on the later levels, so leveling it up is actually quite a bit better than it was previously. The starting items for Gyrocopter depend a lot on what lane you go to. Typically speaking, you want to take the easy safe lane farming role, but you can be a good mid laner as well. Gyrocopter lacks right click damage early on, so if you want to go mid, you'll have to purchase a Tango for basic regeneration and a Wraithband for some extra stats. If you're in the safe lane, you should spend a little bit more on regeneration, which includes a Tango and a Salve to go along with a Ring of Protection to build your Ring of Basilius in lane. Add 3 branches for stats and you're good to go. In the early game, you should finish the Ring of Basilius in the side shop, and then create the full Ring of Aquila, which gives you some damage along with a mana regeneration to support your abilities. Also, finish your wand and keep a TP at all times, since you can actually help your teammates unlike some other carries. But if your main objective is to farm, then don't feel bad about getting a Hand of Midas. Boots of choice for Gyro is between Phase and Power Treads. Treads give you better overall stats and attack speed, but Phase will give you some extra damage and mobility. Keep in mind that there's definite synergy between Phase Boots and Rocket Barrage, but remember that you need to use Rocket Barrage first and then Phase. If you do it the other way around, you will lose your phase effect completely. In the mid game, there are 2 builds to choose from. In the first one, you'll pick up a Yasha together with a BKB and Helm of the Dominator. This combination lets you both farm quickly and join early fights. This build is recommended if you're with a safe lane carry and opt to become unstoppable in the late game. The second build would include a Drum of Endurance with a Shadow Blade and Helm of the Dominator. This will provide you with a healthy mix of survivability and damage, thus allowing you to take part in early engagements. A BKB is still recommended no matter what build you follow. In the late game, your choices free up, but for a true Gyrocopter carry, you want to look out for both damage and survivability. Butterfly and Satanic will make you insanely tanky while also giving you some damage and stats. A Monkey King Bar is great for adding extra damage to your flak cannon as well, while a Manta style will give you the ability to split push and create chaos in teamfights. The Manta in general is okay, but not amazing on a hero like Gyro who can't take true advantage of the illusions. As a result, it's not unheard of to build an SNY for ultra mobility. Luxury and situational items include an Aghanim Scepter, which will give your ultimate global range, but honestly this isn't recommended unless you're playing the utility role for your team. A Lincoln Sphere won't give as much survivability against magical damage as BKB, however you can block some targeted spells depending on what lineup you're going against. And then the end-all item for Gyrocopter that is surprisingly less situational than you think is the Divine Rapier. There's no other hero that benefits more from a Divine Rapier, as your flak cannon depends on absolute raw damage. This is usually only recommended if you're horribly behind, or if it's close and you just can't quite finish the game without it. Gyrocopter is, as already mentioned, a carry with good damage early on. This makes him a really good safe laner. However, he needs a lot of farm to truly fit the hard carry role, but once he gets there, he can rip the entire enemy team apart on his own. Now let's talk about how to utilize his skills properly. Rocket Barrage is extremely powerful early game due to its high magical damage. If you are, however, moving in for a kill, try to stay close to your enemy and away from creeps to maximize the dealt damage. You can easily get kills in your lane if you have the proper support that helps you set it up. Try to utilize the fact that it has low mana cost and low cooldown. Note that sometimes it's better to run next to the enemy hero with Rocket Barrage activated without attacking him along the way. If you do it this way, you do not draw creep aggro, so you can avoid splitting the damage with creeps. Additionally, it's easier to stay on the target since you don't have the small breaks in your movement when you attack. A good rule of thumb is that if no creeps are around and you're in melee range with the target, you can get some extra attacks off. Or if you're about 300 range to the enemy hero, don't attack as it will result in you getting out of range for Rocket Barrage to hit. And as the game gets later and your attack damage gets higher, you don't always want to be too close to the enemies. As a result, this skill kind of drops off a bit, but can still be very useful for farming as well. Homing Missile is quite powerful and could theoretically deal huge amounts of damage. The downsides of the missile are that it moves very slowly in the beginning and can be potentially shot down. If you want to set up a kill with it, try starting it behind the tree line so the initial launch won't be seen. This has never been the most popular skill for Gyro, but can still be very annoying to enemies. But it is still useful in its own right as it will hit invisible units. You'll still need some detection to actually do anything about it, but when used on a single fleeing target, it's very difficult to fully get away. This especially comes into play when trying to kill the missile itself. While it's in the air, the enemy will at the very least need a second teammate to finish it off, since towers essentially count as half a hit. Flak Cannon is really powerful in terms of farming in the jungle, and will help you get to your core items fast. Remember, however, that the main purpose of the spell is to wreck the entire enemy team in the late game. With its almost game-breaking range, no one can hide from you in teamfights. And as mentioned previously, Flak Cannon is especially powerful with raw damage items. The reason for this is that although the main target you're attacking can proc something like a critical strike, the rest of the Flak Cannon hits will not. And lastly, Gyro's ultimate calldown is a spell which consists of magical AoE damage and slow. Remember that the damage and slow are both higher on the first missile, so keep that first 2-second delay in mind when casting. This obviously works well in any big teamfight composition, and has quite a low cooldown, so whiffing it ends up not being a huge deal in the grand scheme of things. The nice thing about this spell is that even when the opposing team has mass BKBs, your ult is still quite useful as the slow will go right through it. Use this to gain positional advantage in fights. Friends of Gyrocopter are heroes that can help him get kills in the early to mid game by keeping targets in position. In addition, heroes that have good teamfight setup end up synergizing quite well. Crystal Maiden and Naga Siren both have good lockdown skills with their Ensnare and Frostbite that can easily secure an early kill in the lane. Also, both have huge teamfight ultimates that can either set up your cooldown or stop enemies from leaving it. Other heroes that fit the bill are Magnus and Tidehunter with their amazing teamfight capabilities. A special shout out should go out to Vengeful Spirit. Her stun is rather short compared to other lockdowns in the game, but her late game synergy with Gyrocopter due to her Vengeance aura is incredible. Foes of Gyrocopter are heroes that can evade his nuking damage and fight him head to head. Also, invisible assassin type heroes are quite good too, especially while you're still squishy. Examples here would be Ricky with his permanent invisibility, as well as Bounty Hunter with Shadow Walk. Although invisibility is hard to deal with, magic immunity is even worse for you. Both Juggernaut and Lifestealer will rip you apart with Blade Fury and Rage respectively. Essentially, any hero that can get up close and personal while ignoring your Rocket Barrage are real threats. A special mention should go out to Omni Knight since he counters Gyrocopter in a multitude of ways. First, the pure damage of Purification will destroy you if you're even trying to get up close and personal with Rocket Barrage. Second, his Repel will obviously block all your magic damage output. And third, Guardian Angel will completely counter your Flak Cannon. Luckily, the cooldown of Flak Cannon is quite a bit lower than Omni's ult.